Hey everyone, this is Jorge Soto and you're watching Startups Unedited.
Hey everyone, this is Jorge Soto and you're watching Startups Unedited. Today I'm with Branko Cerny, who's co-founder and CEO at Immediately app. And Branko, before you interject, I just want to say how amazing and how well accomplished you are academically as well. I mean, Dartmouth College, you've done TEDx, Dartmouth speeches in the past, you were at Google, really great stuff. How are you?
I'm good, and you're too kind. Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I really appreciate it. As a CEO of a company, especially an early stage business, I know how crazy it gets. So really appreciate it. Why don't you take a second to kind of just tell the audience a little bit about your background? How did you go from an Ivy League school to now torturing yourself doing a startup? Of course,
yeah. Well, it's not. Yeah, you got a lot on there. Yeah, man. I grew up in Prague in the Czech Republic, and then I came out to the States for Dartmouth, and I thought I was going to be a lawyer, which would have been a disaster because I, just like most entrepreneurs, have awful ADHD and can only pay attention for like 7 seconds. And so I ended up studying psychology at Dartmouth, and I didn't build in a technical background, but I became really fascinated as I studied psychology and cognition by how destructive bad technology can be. I was at that point already in school really busy with a bunch of projects that I was doing, like the TEDx conference that you mentioned. And I would, just like we all do now, get nonstop notifications on my iPhone. And then when I learned that research shows that it takes up to 15 minutes to recover full focus on a task, I was just like, wow, this is crazy. We have all this extremely powerful stuff, but it's also potentially hurting us, and it could be better. And so that was kind of the optimization opportunity that, without even having much knowledge about Silicon Valley or the tech world or anything like that, it kind of started rumbling through my head. And then when I graduated, I took a job at Google in their marketing program. And at that point, though, me and my co-founder, James, were already working on this stuff together, kind of hacking on prototypes for what better, kind of more human, user-centric design for business productivity could look like. And after a couple months at Google, it just kind of became clear that I was too restless to be at a large company, and that I was kind of like inherently craving I could feel that it's going to be really hard and shitty at times, but I was kind of inherently craving those challenges that come with starting something from scratch. And so
Absolutely.
2013.
Well, let's unpack that for a second, the restlessness, because I completely get what that means and what that means for me specifically. When I'm working for someone else, early on, sometimes it's a lot of fun, but I like to say it normalizes, and then I just become incredibly restless. Like, I want to do more. And as the company grows, you almost sort of do less because you have to hire people. And, I guess depending on what kind of organizational structure you have. But let's unpack that. What does that actually look like, being restless at your day job?
Yeah, well, I think it's like a specific type of temperament that you have, or something that you're born with, where I think you really want to be challenged at at a really profound level all the time. And I think that's what makes entrepreneurship so hard and so rewarding at the same time, is I think the challenges are more personal than they are business challenges in the conventional sense of the word. And that's what I think you're restless about, is that you want that. It's less succeed as a founder. It's not like the MBA stuff that you need. It's stuff that like a good grandparent will teach you. It's you can't find in a business book how to be authentic as a leader, how to manage your internal emotional state, how to know your limitations so that you can avoid making decisions based on bad cognitive biases and all of that. You just kind of have to grow as a person, and you have to learn how to every day when it gets rough, inspire confidence in your team. And the challenge is, you have to hire the best people. You have to attract the best investors, and you're always punching way above your weight class. And to do all of that, you need to make people fall in love with whatever it is that you're doing. And to accomplish that, you need to really be in love with that in a really profound way. And even on a shitty day, you need to be able to project that out. And I think in order to get all of that done, you know, you need to know yourself really well. And the challenges are kind of like lonely and hard, and it can get sad at times. But
how do you deal with those moments? Like the lonely, the sad, like.
Yeah, well, I think you have to realize just how rewarding it is. Because then, you know, when you realize that, you know, you've been running a company for a while, and you will get faced with just about all of the rough stuff that you can, right? Like bad luck, burnout, lawsuits, betrayal, impacted health because you forget to sleep. And then you realize that how you respond to these things defines your quality as a founder. And these things are very much the stuff of life, right? They're not just challenges that are particular to your actual business. And so then you get to reflect on that and realize, wow, I in order to thrive as a founder, I'm kind of learning how to thrive as a person, how to enable myself and the people around me to be happy and to succeed, and how to deal with whatever life throws my way. And there's nothing more rewarding than that. And I think that's what we're restless about. That's what we crave. It's just getting better at being a good human, at having integrity and fortitude, and just kind of taking life and seizing it, you know?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I like to focus on what I like to call the gooey stuff. And for me, that's the stuff that really matters. And, you know, the strategies and the processes and the tools that you use to set up your whatever stack, whether it's your sales stack, marketing, whatever it is, right? All the tactical business stuff. I think those things are important, but I think if you're missing the human component, I think that you're really at a disadvantage. Let's talk a little bit about what kind of advice you would give a young entrepreneur out there about preparing themselves for this journey. You see the media and you know, all these now HBO has a show, and gosh, it seems like everyone's talking about Silicon Valley now, right? And they're really sort of like, I think, portraying it in a way that's inaccurate, right? That's really kind of portraying this sort of, you know, Mark Zuckerberg type story. You look at the movie Facebook, right? And I think that's it's certainly sensationalism. I mean, it was true, but you know, what are the odds, right? 9 out of 10.
Yeah, and it kind of skips all of the important pieces.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
if you're a young, exactly right. If you're a young entrepreneur out there, like who's listening to this or watching this episode, what would you say to them about preparing themselves? And this is really more like mentally preparing themselves for this journey, of not only building the business, but becoming a stronger leader.
Yeah. Well, on a personal level, being a founder, you know, it is a deeply personal journey. You'll be pushed to understand yourself in a real way, and will have to develop extremely fast as a person, as an individual, in order to succeed. And it will always be at the worst possible moment, when you're the most busy and you just need to be like dealing with email, but really instead you should be spending the day like introspecting and figuring out what's wrong that makes you always like react poorly, or whatever it is that you need to work on. And that can get really lonely and really hard. But I think it's such a privilege, you know. It's you when you're at a large company, you're working for somebody, towards somebody else's dream, enabling that company to succeed. When you're a founder, you're creating something from the heart, and the investment that you make primarily is in yourself as a human, and then it hopefully extends into creating value for others. But it really is predicated on investing in yourself, and I think that's a wonderful privilege.
Let me ask you about organizations, right? You mentioned working for someone else. By the way, I've never been able to do it too long.
Yeah.
I've been, you know, whenever I have hung out at companies longer than a couple of years, let's say 2 years, it's because, you know, I was early there, and my best friends were the leadership there. But, you know, are companies actually like set up to continue to foster this entrepreneurial energy or this like ability to just do things without a lot of red tape? Because it almost seems like once you're outside of that core group, you already have layers, right? And there's an inherent separation between the founder who will give their left arm for this company and then someone who's would never give their left arm. Maybe they're taking risk, right? But they're still taking a salary and they're still a W-2 employee, right? That's very different than being this founder. Are companies set up to do that? I haven't seen it.
I don't know. I don't want to like dismiss all large companies because, God bless people that can create an organization that gives a great livelihood to 1,000 people. It's remarkable. But yeah, I think by definition, a startup, it like doesn't make any like mathematical sense or something, right? It's not rational. You're saying, oh, it's me and my 21-year-old co-founder, and we're going to try to take Salesforce head on. It makes no sense. But some people make it happen. And I think the forces that make that happen have a lot to do with the existential pressure of it, with it being really your own. And if there's nobody to fall back on, you really just have to make it happen. And I think it's a very non-linear exercise for the founding team, for the first however many people, depending on how the organization is structured, where like once you get past that point where you know that if you don't figure this thing out, somebody else probably will because there's enough people, I think you lose that element of like survival. And we're animals, and survival is the most powerful force that exists. And so I think, if the survival of your company, if you're on existential, if you have savings even, like if you're fine, if your company fails, then I don't think you're faced with the right pressures that usually equate with being entrepreneurial. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, 100%. And I hate that I understand what you're talking about because it's kind of like where you look back, you look in the bank and you go, okay, I've worked really hard for that stuff. And I really hate when I don't know how to pay rent or where I'm going to live the next week. So, how do we find that balance? I don't know, right? I'm still certainly trying to figure it out in many ways in terms of, not going broke, right? Not burning all your money, because you can very easily invest a lot of money in a bunch of startups. And then next thing you know, you go, oh man.
But like think about Musk, right? Like he's famous for letting all his PayPal money go into his 3 companies and then having to borrow money for rent. It's like a cliche that everybody talks about. But I don't think it's like just cool. I think it's very deliberate. Like he was like, well, I could be independently wealthy for the rest of my life, but that would mean that I couldn't face the pressures that you need to face to create something extraordinary. So he just put himself in that like shitty position of, again, having to fight for survival. And so there just is something that is unique about that.
Now, is there something specific to this area? You talk about that existential like crisis sort of moment that you have to force yourself into, that I actually believe that a lot of great things are generated from that pressure, right? That forcing function that really drives you into action, right? Where you hit that point, whether it's, you've been at a job for X, Y, Z years and you're just like, I'm on zero, I have no choice, or you've tried to do the 9-to-5 thing kind of thing and try to work on your projects. And you just, after so many years, again, you just hit zero, you hit that wall. Is that something that's like specific to this area? Because it almost seems like Silicon Valley, I've been coming back and forth over almost a decade now. And now I've been here almost 6 years straight, which is insane. But it seems like there's this pressure and expectation that exists in this area that doesn't really exist in this way in other places.
Yeah, I think it's unique here in that sense, and it's partially like the pressure and expectation. Like it's something that's like normal and celebrated when you do that. But I also think that you could flip that and say that there's a unique support network, right? Like I think almost just as important as the pressures that exist. There's no shame in being broke. Like if you're running a company and you're kind of pedal to the metal and down to the wire, there's no shame in that. Like nobody's going to ask you what like your 401ks or something.
Yeah.
Like the more broke you are and the more people see that you're putting it all on the line, the more you get these incredible, brilliant people helping you out. And there really is a completely outsized proportion, I think, of people here who have worked their asses off their whole lives like this, and then have succeeded big in the end. But they went through this very difficult, humbling process, and so they never grew an ego. And they might have a tremendous net worth, but you could never tell from their attitude. And they make it their life's mission to enable others to do the same. And just I've always been broke, and I've never felt like, sometimes you'd be like, man, like it'd be nice to like have a cush job or something. But I think then you see all the people who have made it, and they kind of still act like they're broke, a lot of them, because they just learned that that's not what matters. And
it doesn't matter.
They spend all their time helping others. And it's like they're riding around town on like a scooter and wearing like baggy jeans and just trying to help. And just, I think, puts your focus on the right things. Like it almost makes it, I would almost like feel awkward being like, yeah, you know, I like got offered that job that pays a lot of money, and yeah, I have the ability to like create value, but you know, that would be uncomfortable. So I kind of went with the high paying job. Like I'd kind of feel like ashamed, like I have to move to New York or something, you know?
Yeah, totally. Right. If you were in this area with all this opportunity that's here, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know what? I wanted to tell you a quick story. So I'm in China, and this was last year, and I was with a very good friend of mine who had participated in an exit that it made him very, very independently wealthy. And I remember sitting there. We were at the best hotel in Shanghai, according to whatever ratings, you know. And it was cool. Don't get me wrong. We had like the best suite, and it was like an insane view and everything. But one thing kept hitting me, right? Like hitting home and kind of surfacing within me. And it was, well, this is cool, but it's not like that cool. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, it's just like my buddy and we're sitting here, and I kept thinking, man, like, yeah, it's cool, but I really wish that I had like my family around or something, or like someone to enjoy it, because everyone in this, like, since we had the top suite, people were just like, you know, super nice. And you could tell it was like, yeah, great service, don't get me wrong, but it was still impersonal. It was still kind of like this very weird treatment, you know, and
it lacks substance somehow.
Yeah, it lacked substance. It lacked emotion. I'm not sure. And I remember my friend kind of missing, you know, his significant other, and we just saying, man, this is cool, and I'm glad we did it, but next time, you know, let's really just kind of focus on being with the people we care about. And I think that's one thing that, you know, people who have generated a lot of money, a lot of the time, at least in my experience, start to realize it's not only about money. And then I think sometimes when you get there and you're like, oh, I made more money than I've ever made, you know, should I buy like, you know, Ferrari now or something? You know, it's like, you know, those things I don't know, man. I don't know that they matter. But in any case, I don't want to ramble on too much. Branko, thank you so much for doing this today. I really appreciate it. If folks want to learn more about all the great things that you're doing with Get Unstuck and Immediately app, and I know we didn't really talk about that today, but we should at some point, because what you're building is fantastic. And I think you're building the future of the way that a salesperson really moves around and navigates and actually executes things, and not spending a bunch of time actually logging things.
Thanks, man.
Absolutely. And so what's your Twitter handle that people could follow you at?
Well, it's a Branko Cerny, which nobody will know how to spell. And so I'm sure you'll include that somewhere in a caption.
Absolutely. Well, have a wonderful day, and yeah, we'll talk soon.